about to change your life. I am Stephen Hawking, and I'd like to give you a glimpse of your future. In this series, 5 top scientists will investigate game-changing innovations.
This is pretty mind-blowing.
The top waves of progress are heading your way. We'll show you how you will be safer, play harder, connect better, live longer, see further, and get smarter. With the technology at our disposal, the possibilities are unlimited. So welcome to the science of the future. We are entering a new age, in which we will integrate technology into our very nature. An age in which you can no longer determine what is human and what is not. The ultimate convergence of man and machine is inevitable, the process already redefining what it means to be human. The human brain is the most complex of organs, containing more than 85 billion nerve cells, or neurons. These neurons carry messages around our brain using chemicals and electricity. Science has long known that low-voltage electric current can stimulate the brain, but one research team now thinks they can use electricity to make us smarter. Jim Al-Khalili is off to Oxford to investigate this bold claim.
We all know that we can train and sculpt our bodies to make them better, faster, and stronger. Alas, there isn't a simple pill or easy shortcut to getting the perfect body. It's just going to take you lots and lots of time and hard effort exercising. But what about our brains? Can we train our brains to make them stronger and faster? I'm at Oxford University's Department of Experimental Psychology to check out the latest experiments in brain enhancement. For the past decade, a program has been running here experimenting with different electrical pulses to stimulate and improve brain functions. The neurologist in charge of the project is Roy Cohen-Kadosh.
We focus on one of the most advanced human abilities, that is mathematical abilities. And we stimulate brain regions that are involved in mathematical performance in order to make you better with math.
6 minutes. When the project began, the first challenge was to identify exactly which parts of the brain perform which functions. By firing a short burst of magnetism into a specific region of the brain, it's possible to see which functions are affected.
And I give the first pass.
That's very strange.
And again.
So what Rika is doing, she stimulates your left motor cortex, and by doing that, your neurons are going to fire and trigger a movement in your right hand.
What I can feel is a click against the left side of my skull, and then this spasm that I feel nowhere apart from in my hand. It's not making me jump, otherwise both hands would twitch. Roy and his team experimented by firing pulses into different lobes of the brain. You use this technique to locate the parts of the brain responsible for mathematics.
Exactly. And that's what gave us the idea that if we can improve the function of this brain region or other brain regions that involve in math, we can make people better at math.
Once Roy and his team had established which parts of the brain were involved, they set about developing a system that would speed up the flow of information through those areas. A skull cap that sends electricity directly to them while they're already in use.
So we designed this new game in which people need to solve mathematical problems, and we know that it leads to activation in brain regions that we actually stimulate during the game.
So you play the game while
While
wearing the cap.
Exactly, while their brain is being stimulated.
And what sort of results did you find?
We found that while stimulating the brain while people receive mathematical training, we can improve their performance up to 28%.
The results that Roy and his team have found, 28-30% improvement in mathematical ability doing this test, is pretty astonishing. We're going to test out the device on teacher Hannah Powell, who's notoriously bad at maths. First, she takes a test without the cap, and so do I.
And I'll tell you when to stop. Sarah had 200 pounds. Then she bought 4 tires. Each tire cost 35 pounds. How much money did she have left?
God, I have no idea.
Put these fractions in order from smallest to largest.
Quarter, third, half.
How many desks are in each row?
After 50 questions, Miss Powell scores 60%. I do much better, scoring 90%. But then I use maths every day.
I don't know. 300. This is the hat.
Tomorrow we'll try again, but only after a brain stimulation session. And I'm going to try it with her. We'll use our bodies to answer math problems.
Yep, so you just need to locate fractions on the line. So you move your body, and once you're ready, you move your hands up. Okay? Okay.
The goal is to mark a fraction on the straight line at the bottom of the screen.
See what I did there?
As the game progresses, the questions become increasingly difficult. And all the while, our parietal lobes are being stimulated by Dr. Cohen's cap.
That's bang on.
Bad. What a big hairstyle. Well, I feel like that was stimulating. And I think my brain had to work much harder than it normally does. And for good, I could feel it was... I was trying to figure things out much quicker towards the end, so...
And now we take the same test as yesterday to see if we've improved. The game didn't improve me much, but then my training as a theoretical physicist has given me an advantage. So how do you feel you did?
Yesterday, I blanked on so many questions. I could sort of feel it was a bit more open in my brain because I've got such a fear of maths.
Okay. Hannah, you did several percentile points better in one of the tests. I expect if you did the stimulation session a couple more times, you might see bigger results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's right.
Interesting.
So you did almost pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah.
So, Jim, well, you increased a few percentile points. Practice is the cheapest form of brain stimulation.
So how do you see this technology developing in the future? Is it going to be more readily available to everyone?
So we hope it will be available to everyone, but of course it's going to raise ethical issues. For example, those who are already good or excellent can use it in order to further improve their abilities.
But surely if we all get better at maths, then that's fair, isn't it?
Some neuroethicists think that it is not the best approach, but I think if it is safe and doesn't lead to any damage, it has a great future.
So, if we look at this cap here, and you've heard all the really exciting stuff about it, it's going to improve your mathematical ability by 30%. Who thinks they'd like to actually have a go? Who thinks that they'd actually wear it in school?
You wouldn't be embarrassed if you were the only one wearing it?
I'd wear it if everyone else is wearing it, but if I was the only one, then no.
Okay, excellent.
And would you wear it if you were the only one in the whole maths test class?
If it made me cleverer, then I would.
Would you wear it outside the school?
Of course, it's a cool accessory.
Good.
good. It's a cool accessory.
Now, of course, the technology is still many years away, but when that day comes, when people can really gain a firm advantage in carrying out certain mental tasks, then I think we're going to have to very carefully consider some of the ethical implications that would involve. Is it really right that brain-enhancing technology might define the next generation of scientific geniuses?
Regardless of the ethics, by 2020 I believe a number of brain stimulation devices like this one will be available. If people use them to enhance their mental capacity, could it be the next step of human evolution? Many of these technologies may seem invasive today, but it is likely they will be commonplace in the near future. And as the coming decade allows us to expand the power of the brain, we will also find new ways to strengthen the body, even when injuries seem beyond repair. Since the dawn of medicine, physicians have sought ways to repair parts of the body when we break or strain them. As sports become increasingly competitive and demanding, injuries also rise and can sometimes destroy entire careers. What can science do to help? R.T. Brassard is going to Boston to investigate a new technique for ligament repair.
Ice hockey is one of the most physically punishing sports in the world.
But for many of these players, their dreams of finding sporting fame and fortune will be cut short in an instant by one crippling injury.
The tearing of the anterior cruciate ligament in the knee is one of the worst types of injuries. Ligaments are extremely difficult to mend, especially in the complex anatomy of the knee. And it's not just hockey players who suffer. It happened to promising gymnast Shira Lewis.
I was in the middle of practice. It was 2 days before my first meet of my senior year. I was doing a beam dismount. I was still twisting when I landed, and there was just a pop.
Inside Shira's knee, the ligament that helps us turn and pivot, the ACL, had ripped away from her bone. As an experienced gymnast, Shira knew it meant one thing.
It was devastating. I was sitting on the mat, and I looked at my coach, and I said, that's it. I'm not a gymnast anymore.
With today's technology, her only option was to have it removed and replaced with another ligament from her leg. But historically, this operation hasn't been very successful. To find out why it's so difficult to repair, I'm meeting with Braden Fleming at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island.
This is a pig knee, so this would be the thigh bone. This would be the lower leg bone. And if you get down in here, you can see the anterior cruciate ligament.
That's the ACL.
That's the ACL. And the ligament is essentially a biologic rope made up primarily of collagen, which is one of the strongest materials in the body.
So how would you pull it apart?
It takes a lot of force to do that, and we can actually show you. Run it, guys.
Professor Fleming's experiment is a little unusual. A group of medics is going to play tug of war with the pig's knee. So you've got four guys here pulling at this tiny ligament. Are you pulling with force?
Yes.
Yeah, they're turning red.
So the next step.
That's incredible. They're pulling with a force of up to 1,500 newtons, or 150 kilograms, and the ligament stays intact. I didn't think that ligament would hold up. I thought it would snap pretty quickly.
The ligaments can take a lot of force. It's because of the collagen fibers that are interdigitate with one another.
Like a rope.
Just like a rope, correct.
Ligaments may be strong, but they are hard to heal because they have very limited blood supply, meaning the body can't easily send nutrients to repair them.
In Boston's Children's Hospital, they might have the answer. I'm here to meet a team of scientists working on a revolutionary technique, and they think they can repair ligaments instead. This would mean surgery and recovery times might be reduced. Stalled sports careers could get back on track faster.
This is a microscopic picture of what a ligament looks like. When it pops, the fibers will splay apart, kind of like two ends of a mop. And it's very difficult to put a stitch in that'll bring them back together because the stitches won't hold. Other places in the body, when a ligament tears, the two ends bleed, and that blood clot forms a scaffold. But the ACL lives inside the knee joint, which is filled with fluid. And so the fluid washes away any type of scab that might try to form. So the two ends are just moving around in the fluid and they can never reconnect. So if we can make a scaffold that you could put in as a bridge, the two torn ends of the ligament could grow back into and heal the ligament.
So how do you make a scaffold?
This is extracellular matrix that we've taken out of a cow's knee that we can then process into something that looks like this. One of the main components is collagen, and then there are other proteins in it that help the cells crawl into it. So we can take this and place it in between the two torn ends of the ligament and then load it with the patient's blood, and it will hold it in place in the knee so it can't get washed away by the fluid.
I'm about to find out if bioenhanced collagen can really prevent a blood clot from being dissolved.
So they're going to add human blood to the same materials that are in this scaffold, and that's going to help it form a super clot.
So it looks more like a gel now.
Yeah, it makes it easier to mix for the blood, and then they're going to place that into a mold. And one of the other molds with just blood along.
To make them clot, the two samples are now heated to the same temperature as the human body.
We're going to add fluid now so we can see how the two clots perform differently.
Whoa.
See what happens to the blood.
But that had clotted.
Yeah.
There's nothing left of it.
And so here's what happens if you add the scaffold.
And it's not washing your scaffold away as it's washed the blood away. So what stage are you at with patients?
Well, now we're working on refining the surgical technique so we can use this in a patient.
The test worked. And this is a groundbreaking step towards ligament repair. But so new that it's not ready to be tested on patients. Which is heartbreaking for people like Shira, whose ligament replacement surgery never really took. She'll never compete again.
I just couldn't return to the same level. My knee is unstable. At times it's painful if I step wrong or I land wrong. It's definitely still giving me problems.
Dr. Murray and her team hope to begin trials on humans within the next 3 to 5 years. Until then, surgery using this regenerative technique will have to be further tested on animals, like this pig.
What you just put in is going to dissolve, and what it'll be replaced with will be ACL.
That's right. So you put the scaffold in between those two torn ends in the gap, and then they grow towards each other.
How long after you put it in do you expect to see some improvement?
At about 2 weeks, it looks like a jelly substance. It's not very strong. By about 6 weeks, it's more fibrous. And then at about 12 weeks, it starts to look more like a normal ACL. That's it. These guys are going to close up the knee, and we'll let the pig wake up, and it'll go back to its pen and be walking within an hour or two.
Using this incredible mesh to help harness the body's powerful healing mechanisms and repair itself will transform knee surgery.
This surgery is trying to heal the ACL bit. Would you be able to use it beyond the knee joint in other parts of the body?
Yeah, we think so. Basically, we could use this technology in any joint, or possibly even arthritis.
You're actually asking the body to heal itself.
Right.
Do you think that's the future of medicine?
Absolutely. There are so many wonderful mechanisms that have evolved in the human body to help us stay alive and healthy. And all we want to do is tweak the ones that aren't perfect for living to 105 years of age.
400,000 people suffer ACL damage each year in the US alone. By 2018, some of them should be benefiting from this technique. But it's just one of many breakthroughs where science is helping the body's own healing processes. Broken bones, wounds, and tears will all eventually be repairable in a matter of days using new medical technologies. But sometimes, fixing isn't the answer, some human parts will be replaced, ultimately bringing us the cyborg human. Futurists have long anticipated a time when humans become cyborgs. It is a vision of the world where the line between our organic bodies and machinery blurs. Computer chips, motors and gyros are our bodies. A world where we can redesign ourselves on our laptops. Today we can already put a wide range of electronic or synthetic devices inside or onto our bodies. How long until the fully realized bionic human becomes a reality? Karen Bondar is on her way to MIT in Boston to find the answer.
I'm about to discover that not all limbs are equal. Some are superhuman. Hugh Herr is considered to be one of the world's leading inventors of synthetic legs. He holds 14 design patents, and apart from being an innovator, he is a visionary. He's been called the leader of the bionic age.
Welcome to the Biomechatronics Group.
Oh, wild.
So what we're building here was what will become the world's most comprehensive lab for studying how people move. That science, that deep understanding of our biological bodies motivates what we design, what we build, the bionic structures, both in hardware and software.
How do you even begin to go about doing that? What is the process?
We have mathematical descriptions of the muscle and the tendon and how the muscles are controlled. The model tells us how that limb should move as if it is made of flesh and bone. I'm actually wearing 2 bionic limbs. Both of my legs were amputated in 1982 from a mountain climbing accident. So let me reveal the structures.
This accident drove Hugh to invent bionic legs more powerful than the biological ones he lost. It took over 2 decades for him to make that dream a reality.
There's a small computer chip inside this shell, and in that computer chip is the mathematical model. There's sensors across this bionic limb. That sensor information goes into the computer chip, into the mathematical model. And the mathematical model computes how stiff the leg should be, how powerful it should be, the timing of the power. So even though it's made of synthetic materials, carbon composites, silicon, titanium, it moves as if it's made of flesh and bone.
So what have you got opened up here?
Well, this is a bionic foot ankle. Inside here is a sensor, a force sensor. When I walk, when I move, it detects the level of pressure of force that I apply to the bionic limb. There's a computer chip inside, and what we program that chip to do is to emulate how the calf muscle works. Your calf muscle uses a positive force feedback. So the greater the force on your calf muscle as you walk faster and faster, the greater as your spinal cord activates that muscle to give your body more energy as you move. We've emulated that same reflex in the bionic structure.
So essentially, you've created a feedback mechanism that's very analogous to what would happen in the body naturally.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting because the bionic limb wouldn't work at all in isolation of the human body. It's this biomechatronic interaction between the human and the bionic limb that completes that loop between sensing, computation, and actuation.
On the other side of the lab, Dr. Elliot Rouse is working on an innovative design for a synthetic knee. So this is your biomechatronic knee. The human knee is such an incredibly complex structure. How on earth do you start to redesign it?
What we do is we look at how the knee acts during walking, and we try to replicate that behavior. So that includes both the range of motion that you see during walking, and then also the torque or power about the knee.
So what are the components of your synthetic knee?
We use a motor and a spring. So the motor replicates the muscle, and the spring would replicate the tendon. So that allows us to use a very energy-efficient, biologically inspired approach. But one of the things that robotic prosthetic technologies suffer from is they're very power-hungry. So that means they might have a very large battery, which makes them heavy and cumbersome. So what makes this technology unique is that we use a clutch to only draw energy from the battery when it's absolutely necessary.
Okay, so it's one thing to look at this in the lab, but can we actually look at it on a real person?
Let's do it.
Cool. Now it's time to try out the experimental knee on a test subject, Bob Emerson. His leg was amputated after a car accident when he was just 9 years old. So Bob, how does this feel? Does it sort of feel easier than with your other prosthesis?
It's very easy. Almost like no effort at all.
What is it that sets this technology apart from all of the other prostheses that are available?
So this knee is able to add energy into the gait cycle, meaning that he will be able to go upstairs step over step, where traditional prostheses are passive and they don't allow you to do that. You actually have to drag your affected side up.
That's really key, isn't it? The fact that this is not a passive prosthesis. This has energy. This is allowing the person to actually move. So when will this kind of thing be available to anybody?
So pending successful clinical trials, something like 3 to 5 years. But where this is going to go is it won't be long until we interface directly to his nervous system. So then when he commands his leg to walk, it walks. And when he commands himself to dance, he dances. So that's going to be the next step. And I think it'll be a really big deal.
The ultimate in mind control, really. Wow. What will our relationship with this technology look like in 20 years or so? Can we extend the capabilities of the human body beyond what we can currently imagine?
Today, my limbs are not quite fused with my anatomy. For example, at night when I go to sleep, I actually take my artificial limbs off. In the future, that won't be the case. They'll be completely fused and intimate with my body. There'll be a titanium shaft that goes right into my skeleton. There'll be neural implants that communicate electrical pulses between the biological and the synthetic versions of my body.
So how far will this convergence of man and machine actually take us?
Through fields of regenerative medicine, bionics, genetics, we will create an enhanced human capability. Not only physically, but cognitively as well. We'll just think faster, think smarter, we'll feel more deeply, and we'll have a greater physicality.
I suspect you there is right. Cyborg technology will become commonplace as people realize they can be faster, stronger, and live longer with replaceable body parts made of silicon chips and carbon fiber. Whether healthy body parts should be replaced with bionic ones is an ethical question. But these advances could eventually make people with conditions that might have been considered disabled into superhumans. Enhanced strength and speed is just part of this evolution. Science is opening the door for blind people to see. A radical new interface may even allow us to see in the dark. Science is opening the door for blind people to see. It's a challenge that's proven all but impossible, so far. The eye is a complex instrument. It can't simply be replaced by a computer chip connected to a camera. But now, it seems a researcher in New York has done just that. Chris Elias Smith is investigating the breakthrough.
One of the key problems is understanding the code that the eyes use to communicate with the brain. A scientist here in New York is trying to understand that code, and her discoveries might just revolutionize the way machines and people interact. Sheila Nuremberg is a neuroscientist studying vision. Hi, her field's not far off mine.
How are you?
Great. So I've read a bunch of your papers, and you're doing fantastic work.
Thanks.
I'm really impressed.
I mean, I'm just sort of interested in the brain in general because it's the most interesting part of the body, and and so what we're trying to figure out basically is how neurons communicate with each other, like so how the brain parts communicate with each other, and how the brain communicates with muscles to allow you to do things. So I was interested in that general problem, and I just sort of started simply with a retina. Can I understand how the neurons of the retina tell the brain what you're seeing?
So how long has your lab been doing this?
Well, I've been doing it for about 10 years, mostly focusing on the neural coding part. And then in the last 2 years, I've switched over to the prosthetic part of the story.
Okay, so actually I've heard about visual prosthetics, but my understanding is that they're not working that well.
Well, the reason that they don't work that well is that people typically treat the eye as if it were a camera, but it's actually way more than a camera. So let me show you. Let me just draw it out. When the image comes in and it lands on your retina, that's when it's just like a camera, just an image coming in. But then you have all this retinal circuitry that does something to it. It performs operations on it, it extracts information, and it converts that information into a code. And the code is in the form of these pattern of electrical pulses that get sent up to the brain. So if you want to be able to make a prosthetic device that restores vision, you need to be able to send the signals in the same code as the retina normally does. And so what we've done is just, in an abstract way, using math, mimic that same data compression.
The key is the eye's relationship with the brain. It's complex, and building a machine to mimic it is not easy. The retina is not uniformly sensitive. It registers more detail and color in the center and has a blind spot. We're not aware of that because what we see is interpreted by the brain. That's why cracking the retina-brain code is so hard. But Sheila and her team believe they have done it. So basically here you've got a camera, which is collecting light like the front of the eye does, and that is then going to this piece of silicon, which is now implementing that equation. So it's essentially implementing the code. How are you able to exploit this to help people with blindness?
This is a baseline firing of the neurons.
Right, it's just green noise.
Green noise, and then if I can slide my hand in here, you can see when the brain sees this weird pattern, it knows that what was out there was my hand. And if I move it, then it knows that what was out there was a person's fingers moving.
And so this is actually what would be projected into the back of someone's eye?
Exactly. And so what you have then is a prosthetic device that can produce normal retinal output.
Because of your understanding of the code, those equations.
Exactly. So the image comes in, passes through the set of equations, and out come these streams of electrical pulses, just like a normal retina would produce.
Right. So are you actually using the cells that are still living in the retina to do some of the transduction?
We call it brain jumping. So we're jumping over the damaged retina and going to the surviving cells and asking them to still send the normal signals up to the brain.
So how do you do this jump?
What we do is we inject a compound into the patient's eye. This is an optogenetic molecule that responds to the signals from the device.
So it's actually like a wireless transceiver and now is communicating with the brain. So you've made vision wireless?
Yeah, essentially. And one of the important things about it is that it doesn't actually involve any surgery. So that chip that I was showing you before is actually external to the patient. It's worn in a pair of glasses. And so we make it much smaller. And so that's what we've been doing is we're making a miniature version of the device. And, because this is all external, ultimately we can make much cooler glasses and look like, Geordi and Star Trek and ultimately fashionable. But for now, it's embarrassing ski goggles. As the blind person can start to see himself, he may actually start requesting something more fashionable.
You've given me the gift of sight, but I need to look fashionable. So how long do you think before patients are going to be able to use this?
Well, we're writing up the applications to go through, through the government regulations and the safety trials. And so I'm hoping to be able to do the first clinical trial within 2 years.
By 2016, those trials could be underway, and the people taking part could have their sight improved. Are there other things you can do with this kind of technology?
Well, because it's all in a chip, we can actually give the patient sensitivities to, visual input that they never normally have. Like a bee, they could be sensitive to ultraviolet light, or like a snake, they could be sensitive to infrared.
Right.
And so we can give them, night vision and enhanced sensitivity.
I'm really impressed with Sheila's work. It's definitely some of the best I've seen. That she was able to describe the complex process between an image hitting her eye and the signals being sent to our brain is quite amazing. To think that one day millions of people will have their vision restored or even enhanced so they don't need a contraption like this is absolutely astounding. As we continue to understand the neural code, it's clear to me that our brains and technology will interact in ways we haven't yet imagined.
Chris is right. Discovering more about how the brain works is the next step in designing artificial body enhancements, and this field is set to expand rapidly in the coming decade. But some researchers believe that before people move on to become cyborgs, they need to optimize their existing biological bodies. A military research group is seeking ways not just to build better soldiers, but to fit him out with kit that gives him the edge. No two human bodies are alike, and it seems strange that there is a lack of science that focuses specifically on how to optimize each individual's strengths. This is important in the forces, where a small difference in performance can be absolutely crucial. Daniel Kraft is heading to Massachusetts to investigate.
For anyone who's been in the military, being in a combat zone is bad enough without also having to fight the elements. I just arrived and I'm already soaked to the bone. This definitely sucks. The only good thing about this, however, is it's not real. Okay, guys, that's enough. I'm in a specialized weather tunnel at a U.S. Army research facility in Natick, Massachusetts. It's where they design, develop, and deploy the best gear for soldiers. It's also where they test it out.
This rain chamber can drop over 3 centimeters of water per hour, which is like a hurricane downpour. Every year, soldiers come here to be pushed to the limit for month-long tests in the most extreme conditions the world has to offer. Wet. Hot. Cold.
We have a tropic chamber and an Arctic chamber. The tropic chamber has the capability to go to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and the Arctic chamber can get down to minus 70 degrees below zero.
The point of these test chambers is to measure how each individual responds and to send that data to engineers who design the gear these men and women need for combat. And it all happens under one roof. This one.
We're going to put a typical soldier's combat load on you, just so you get the experience of what it's like to be a soldier out in the deployment.
All right, let's do it.
This is just a small abbreviated amount of the actual kit a typical combat soldier will wear while deployed to combat area.
All right.
Put you in the tropic chamber, and we're going to put you on the treadmill and give you a workout.
It's hot and I'm already feeling heavy, so let's see if it feels tropical.
It's about 106, 107 degrees in here. Relative humidity is about 45%.
So Sergeant Adams, is this pretty realistic?
This is pretty realistic, sir, in terms of, say, the temperature. But once again, you're very light right now, sir.
This is light, okay. And I'm not being shot at.
I'm wearing 40 kilograms of gear, which apparently is on the light side.
Okay, so we started up, and it's a nice day for a walk. Left, right, left.
The point of the test is to monitor my biometrics and see if there's a way to make me perform better in this extreme environment. The lights above me imitate actual sunlight, and the treadmill simulates the kind of endurance needed for a typical exercise.
Let's give him a little more speed.
All right, amp it up. This is the best you can do. Come on.
All right, go ahead and pick it up just another notch.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Are we there yet? Hey, we're getting close. We're getting there.
All right, let's bring him in and bring him down.
Okay, guys, I'm coming out.
The computer measures my ankle, knee, and hip joint rotations. It also measures how much oxygen I'm taking in and the CO2 I'm letting out. Adams compares my body's reaction with other soldiers. A database averages the results. The performance tests reveal that some current Army equipment could benefit from significant weight redistribution. I need to go to another lab to find out whether we can fix the problem. It's easy to have fun inside, but in the field, it's a matter of life and death.
The U.S. Army facility in Massachusetts is engaged in a groundbreaking study of how the human body bears weight and how their kit has to be adapted to keep men and women on the move and alive. This research could be the key to optimizing physical performance in the future.
Welcome to the Center for Military Biomechanics. We conduct basic and applied research projects to evaluate soldier or human performance and soldier-centric products. What I specifically work on is trying to optimize load and how you configure the load and makes them a better athlete, so to speak.
I've already discovered that my gear distribution needs to be adapted for my body. Now it's time to take a closer look at how I move and how the things I wear need to be outfitted. And that means motion capture.
I realize you have to change a lot around this place.
Yes, all right. So first thing, if you just grab a seat right there, we're going to mark you up. Shut that.
So what are the cameras actually seeing when I'm wearing these dots?
Good question. So if you look at this camera over here, you see there's the lens, and around it, there's the white circle. So those shoot infrared light. The infrared light bounces off anything reflective, i.e. the reflective tape wrapped around the ball, and the infrared light goes back to the camera. We're going to put some soldier equipment on you and have you do a few motions.
I'm ready.
Okay.
That's definitely lighter, yeah.
First thing we're going to do is check or test how well you accelerate with the load. So what you want to do is walk. I want you to plant your right foot right here and sprint out.
Okay, got it.
Go ahead.
All right.
Good job. What we just captured was your walk-to-run transition, so trying to figure out how carrying weight slows down your ability to accelerate from a walk to a run. So you can see, you start walking in the capture volume. Your right foot is the orange one. You're going to plant on your right foot and then run out of there.
And you're measuring the force.
Yep, so you see that red vector that comes up?
Right.
That's the force vector. So that's how hard you're pushing down on the ground.
Amazing.
So now we're going to add another 20 kilograms.
And now we're going to try running this again. I'm still dotted up. And rock on.
Ready, Daniel? All right, go ahead.
All right.
All right, good job. Go ahead and come back.
So what are the differences between the second run where I'm wearing another 20 kilos?
You're going to have a greater forward lean. You're going to bend a little bit more at the trunk. You're going to have greater hip and knee flexion, kind of lower your center of mass to increase your stability, because you're, with all that weight, you're probably more likely to tip over, less stable.
And when do you see this sort of emerging outside the lab?
I think in the next year or two, we'll be able to actually measure some of these joint kinematics, their trunk lean, knee angle, out in the field with the wearable device.
Tyler's test shows me exactly how my body performs and how it's different from other subjects. The graph shows a sharper spike with a larger load. By studying the precise changes in performance with different weight distribution, Tyler can input new data to adjust the load. The facility here has now tested thousands of people in order to create the profile of the perfect soldier. And that's certainly not me.
Thank you, it's been fun. You want to try the heavy backpack now?
Heavy one? I thought this was a heavy one.
Follow me.
Oh, man.
This military research has civilian applications. A wave of new technologies are on the rise to quantify the self, measuring all the individual aspects of our body's performance, which enables tailor-made improvements. It's a concept that millions are now embracing in their everyday workouts. And if these precise changes can make me run faster, climb higher, and be stronger, I'm in. The last step is to meet the engineer who looks at all this data to build the ideal kit.
We design all of the load carriage structures that support the modern soldier. Let me show you the newest backpack system that we've fielded. This is called the Molly Medium system. It's got an ergonomically shaped frame that supports on the torso either with or without body armor. And all of the locations of webbing, we tie it into the specific pocket designs.
So where do you see this going in the future?
Well, a lot of it's happening right now. You know, the critical piece on the soldier's load is tying in the ballistics
to the fighting load, and to the larger sustainment package. It's critical. But probably in the next 5 years, we're really going to be able to focus and bring it all together so it's a real kind of a unified system, a little more seamless, if you will.
By 2018, the researchers and designers at Natick expect to outfit a new generation of soldiers for combat in gear that is lighter, sleeker, and safer.
The U.S. Army has taken a very thorough approach to evaluating human performance and custom designing gear all under one roof. A belief in the idea that small improvements in a number of areas can lead to a marked improvement overall. The civilian applications of this program are wide and numerous. The more precise the understanding of the human body becomes, the better scientists can design new technologies to adapt it to a changing world. It's obvious that humans will continue to perfect and enhance themselves with technology that may even lead to a radical leap, where people might replace perfectly functioning parts with better, artificial ones. Cyborg limbs, bionic eyes, enhanced brains, kit that makes people stronger. It's not science fiction. It's all already real.